we would harvest our own mushrooms out there and started experimenting with making teas. And it was basically instant. Like the first night that we made teas with Amanita Muscaria, we just had deep sleep, crazy dreams all night long, and the next day I could remember almost every detail.
Interesting.
Yeah, just like game changer.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch!
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. I am actually in the wild right now. I'm sat on a hillside. It's early morning. Just went for a nice walk to see if I could get some phone signal. Alas, not successful. But I'm here enjoying a stunning view in this nature reserve. It's maybe 4 hours drive east of Johannesburg, which is one of the main industrial towns in South Africa. I've seen an abundance of kudu, duiker, warthogs as well. Also, quite a few animals that I don't know the name of, which is commonplace when I'm over here in South Africa. My family who live in Joburg have invited us to this amazing place. They discovered it a few years ago and have been coming back. We've been doing all kinds of adventurous stuff, fly fishing. I managed to catch one, but I do feel like I've learned a lot with my technique, so I'm actually excited to try and pick up a rod and head off to some different spots and give it another crack sometime soon. I think I might have gotten the bug, which is always a dangerous thing. But this episode is not about South Africa. It is a return to mushrooms with William Arthur Sprague IV. This is the second part of his episode about psychedelics and using mushrooms to expand your mind and change your life, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. We go into a bunch of conversational sidetracks about the origin of humanity and mushrooms and how they can be interconnected. We talk a lot about Amanita Muscaria and its uses and benefits, and of course a bunch of other stuff too. I'd like to say a big thank you to William for sharing his time, his knowledge, and also the music that you hear in this episode is created by him, which I think we talk about this early on in this episode. Taking mushrooms to make music, to take mushrooms to, in a wonderfully cyclical existence that William has. It's also a good moment to take a second and say, if you are enjoying this podcast, if you've been enjoying some of the previous episodes, including William's, then by all means, please feel free to do all the things that people who enjoy podcasts do. Give us a follow, set podcasts to auto download, and share with a friend. If you enjoy the podcast and you know someone who you think will also enjoy it, then feel free to sling it their way. Right, I think that's enough waffling from me. I'm excited to share the second part of this episode. Here's William now.
I think so. I think a big part of what I take people out on private guided hunts. I'll do bigger group talks. One of the biggest turnouts for the MCMC, Mendocino Coast Mushroom Club meetings last season was a talk that I gave on how to hunt morel mushrooms, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know if I want to say guilty, but I like to get people excited about being out in the woods, and I think the more sort of even just like city folks that don't get much of experience with nature, the more time that they can get out there and maybe make that connection. I feel like we need more of it, because we need people to respect and understand the beauty that is there, and that it needs to be maintained and protected. And the more people that are moving away from engaging with nature, that kind of scares me for the long haul.
Yeah.
And, yes, maybe more people are getting into areas that I used to hunt and be like quite easy. I'm happy to share that with folks that are looking for that similar kind of experience that I've had that's shaped me along the way. But we need to be mindful of what's out there and how we engage, and also understand, who occupied these lands here before us, the native cultures that were here, and I'm sure just beyond successful in their daily bounty gathering and hunting, that has been just really pulled out from under them. That's all like super important to me. But I'm trying, I guess, by like sharing my experience and posting online things that I've found and discovered and learned. I'm really honestly just trying to inspire people to get out there and engage with nature and have a similar, but in their own way, relationship with nature, and hopefully they're gaining love and respect and understanding that these areas need to be, cared for and respected along the way. There's always more places that I can hunt, and in fact, early on, I was getting a little bit bummed on like, oh man, somebody found, quote unquote, my patch, or this spot that I knew, and I really tried to navigate away from that mindset and be like, well, if this is like a spot that somebody else can easily get into and explore and have success with fruits of the forest, then maybe I need to push things out beyond that a little bit. So what it really did for me was turn me into a much better hunter and more in tune with nature, and got better at being comfortable deeper in the woods, which most people don't get to that point. Even as avid mushroom hunters, they're still sticking to the trail or slightly off the trail, where for me now, I'm really way less interested in that kind of mushroom hunting. I want to bushwhack, get off trail as fast as I can. And, we were going through a lot of this yesterday, where we were seeing, maybe, even though we were pretty deep, we were still seeing signs that maybe somebody else had come through here.
Yeah.
And so then it was just more of a matter, well, let's take a look at what's around us here and take some paths, some game trails, some just bushwhacking to get into zones where nobody has been yet, at least, this season, or looking for this particular mushroom at this time. And that's what sort of, it just expanded my mushroom hunting skills and gave me confidence to go deeper and be more comfortable in those sort of settings. And it definitely, the bounty was just even more so that way.
Yeah. I think it's also, when you work harder for something, it feels better as well. When a hunt's been really hard, whatever it is you're chasing, it tastes better, the experience is better, the memories are better.
Totally.
So earning it more, it definitely adds an extra little spice to the whole experience, I think.
It definitely does.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
This rain, I don't know if it's picking up on the mics, but it's pumping down now.
It really is. I'm looking at the window behind you, and it's just almost like a whitewash coming down. We knew it was coming, but
Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't come like this on us yesterday.
I know. I'm glad to have got out. I felt like this morning I needed to go and clean up some of the mushrooms that were around here because they were going to get battered by this. So.
Yeah. Rescue mission.
Exactly. Okay, so I've got a question. Maybe if there's anything else about magic mushrooms, psilocybin, then by all means jump in. But I guess there's a couple of like other practical questions. If you're hunting psilocybin, where can you find it? I think you told me before it grows in cow dung. Is that right?
It can.
Okay, but it doesn't always.
Doesn't always.
Okay. So what's the kind of...
So it's sort of a sensitive question because I don't really want to advocate hunting psychoactive mushrooms in a lot of their natural growing places. It happens to be in usually actually a lot of protected lands and grasses along the coast and like dunes. So like Oregon, Humboldt, places like that. Humboldt and north, all the way up into Washington. Kind of like marshy areas and grasslands butted up into the dunes. And I have hunted them in those kind of areas, and there are ways to do it to be, with minimal impact on those type of environments. But there's a lot of folks that are getting into doing that and are not very respectful to those environments. So I try not to advocate folks to hunt in those kind of areas. But in a different situation where they also thrive, I think is totally great and people should. And those sort of those environments are more in like landscape wood chip areas, and they can be quite abundant in those kind of areas. And there's almost anywhere you find wood chips and moisture, and a lot of chipped areas will have irrigation systems in them. So even in times where it should be hot and dry and no mushrooms in them, the mycelium is basically being fed by that moisture, and it makes it easier for them to break down that the wood chip material and have that mycelium run and then in turn fruit. So here in Fort Bragg, here on the coast of Mendocino, I've seen them in all different kind of situations up here. A lot, even like slightly rural spots where they've been like wood chipped into gardens. That's like super common.
Okay.
I've seen them in wood chips just on the side of the highway that have been kind of sitting for a while. A lot of people's gardens and front yards and stuff, just in every little town you can think of in our area. And there's some folks that will inoculate wood chips even like in the forests where they've done thinning out and some logging and stuff like that. Though you'll find wood chips out in those kind of situations, and There's several people that are like super into it up in the Washington and Oregon area where they'll go out and they'll inoculate those chips and just get things to happen naturally. And in those kind of environments, you're not really destroying anything.
Yes.
So it's just, and like I said, the fruitings could be really, really big. I found a pile of wood chips that I looked at several times going into this one forest over in Mendocino last year. And my wife was like, why do you keep, you keep looking at, I know. And then finally one day they were there. And she was just like, no way. And I was like, I told you, every pile of wood chips during a certain part of the year, I'm just always looking.
Is it any kind of wood chip or is it a specific tree?
I used to think it was like pretty specific to like hardwoods and woods
like
and
tan oak or something
around
like
here. Yeah, maybe like tan oak, definitely alder.
Yeah.
They're notorious for growing in alder chips. But these chips I found out were grand fir.
Oh.
And I've seen them growing in redwood chips too, which you would think they wouldn't grow in. It's really high in tannin. So all kinds of conifers, all kinds of trees. And so, yeah, this pile had them fruiting in there one day. And I went back several times. They were like just pinning. So just like the fruiting bodies were just starting to show up, and they were really small, like too small to really harvest. I think I harvested like literally a handful that day that were big enough and ready. But it's a delicate mushroom. And this is cyanescence. Mostly it's cyanescence and azarescence that are in our area.
So that's a variant of magic mushroom, of psilocybin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Natural. And so I just kind of like, well, I'm not sure how fast they're gonna grow, how big the fruiting bodies are gonna get. So I think I was like checking this pile like every 3 or 4 days, and it was kind of an experiment for me to see how fast and how many fruiting bodies would shoot up, and how long it took to get to like a sort of proper size to harvest, which is like maybe around like the size of like a quarter, a coin.
Okay.
And so I did that for a couple weeks and just spot harvested from it multiple times. And then they started kind of like not really throwing out fruits as much. And then I saw somebody took probably like a small, like a bobcat or something to it, like a little small excavator, and grabbed a bunch of chips for their garden. And I was like, oh no, this pile is going to go. So I grabbed some mushroom crates that I had in my truck, went over there and filled like 3 or 4 of them up with the chips that I saw had the white mycelium just like running through all the chips. Brought that back to my place, let them run a little bit harder in these crates, and they kind of like turned into like these solid bricks almost. And I was like watering them with my hose and kept them in kind of a shady spot. And so I was basically farming that mycelium for a couple weeks. And then I acquired more chips, alder, mixed pine, and I used cardboard and these chips to do kind of like a mycelium, or like a lasagna of the mycelium on my property, in a few different places on my property. And so, cardboard down, wet it, throw the chips that I harvested that had the mycelium, throw fresh new chips on top of that, cardboard, repeat.
Oh, it's like a composter almost.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's basically just giving them, they really run fast. The mycelium really runs fast on cardboard. They like that corrugation with a little bit of air in there.
Yeah, everything they need is in there.
And it's basically, wood, paper. So they'll eat that as food too. So I let that get established, and I mean, I just checked on it a couple days ago because we've been getting so much rain, and that mycelium is definitely running through all these chips and all 3 of the spots that I put them on my property. So, but the thing is, for that mushroom, it's not hard really to establish the mycelium. Like, you just give it some food and it's going to do its natural thing. The tricky part is like getting it to fruit. And in cultivation, you can do all kinds of tricks, with light and heat and airflow, even like stimulation, physical stimulation to the substrate bags, and to get them to fruit. Usually it's humidity and temperature swing that you induce, and then they're just like, oh,
That'll trigger them.
It triggers them. So when they're out in nature, they're sort of at whatever nature is throwing at them for the parameters. So it might just be too cold. It might just be too windy and dry. You could water these areas, and I do that too, but still it's like I'm pretty certain like it's a certain temperature swing that they like, and for a consistent duration. And if you're not getting that, they're not gonna fruit. But they might fruit like 3 years from now.
Right.
So it's just a matter of the right scenario that's like out of my control. But it is very satisfying to like do that process and see that mycelium running in there, and like have the potential of that of the fruiting taking place and having your own medicine right there.
Yeah.
It's like really, really cool and really fun to watch either way. And then, if they fruit, they could fruit soon. Actually, like right now is like good timing for them. But if we get too much rain or it stays too cold, then it may not happen. But maybe next year or the next. You don't really know. It's kind of like a patient game, and you're at the beck and call of what nature wants to do.
Yeah, it's part of the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I'm dabbling. Maybe I mentioned this earlier, this chat. My memory is not the best. But a little bit of like mushroom farming in itself. The thing you told me, the trick of poisoning Russula brevipees with the lobster mushroom shavings, which is what you actually also did in your garden.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a break and cough, or are you good?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, there's like a giddy excitement for me. Maybe it's just because it's new, but taking some of those scraps of a lobster and then like trying to poison one of the other mushrooms to make more lobsters is a pretty fun project for me. So I can only imagine when you've got it going on in your yard, in your garden. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cool. So I wonder if we should. How are you doing? Are you good?
Yeah.
Good to chat ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, awesome.
Where are we at with time?
I mean, I figured
This is going to be another 2-parter.
it might be.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you. If you've got to run, then that's also fine.
No, that's good. Let's keep rocking.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. As long as you're having a good time.
Yeah. Let's
to me.
see. We haven't. Let me rest my ears for a sec.
Yeah, let's take a break. Should we take a break for a second? Can we do it? Or do you want to have more of a break?
No. Let's dive in.
Okay.
Just more editing for you.
Oh, it's all good. But it's fun because it means I get to listen to the conversation. You look like it's a little closer. Yeah, that looks good. So I said that you made me think of a question, and now I've promptly forgotten what that question was. No, I think I know what it is. And this is something it's a bit of a side note, but it's actually kind of loosely connected to one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Part of you getting into this ginger beer and like experimenting with making really nice, natural, homemade drinks is because you've kind of like fallen away from drinking alcohol so much. Not to say that you're like teetotal, and I kind of in a similar boat. I don't really drink very often these days, but I've just kind of moved away from it. The question I had was kind of a bit more related to, and I think these two kind of interconnect, but it's kind of related to when you started taking psychedelics. Before you were kind of really in the depths of mushroom hunting, and this has kind of become a big part of your identity, which is maybe just the last kind of decade or so, right? And we talked about this in, I think, your first episode when we did like your intro. You were in the weed industry more. And you, I would assume, were partaking in weed at that point. Did you find there was a point where you've kind of transitioned away from having as much weed and more towards mushrooms and psychedelics and other mushrooms? Like, has that been kind of a gradual transition for you as you've become like more entwined in the kind of mycelium world?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I still partake in cannabis.
Okay, so it's just an assumption on my part.
No, I mean, I was in the quote unquote cannabis industry more, where I was like doing that for a job.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But I still smoke cannabis basically on a daily.
Okay.
But I've pulled it way, way back. You know, I'm mostly now just like an evening smoker.
Okay.
I tend to like it a little bit before dinner. We make really nice fancy dinners most nights, and it kind of just makes it a little bit sweeter to enjoy. But you're not really a smoker, so I don't know if you can relate to that kind of a thing. Some people think
I have smoked. I'm not a regular smoker, and I've like partaken.
Yeah. Well, some people think that it's like, you know, they got to smoke before they do everything and anything because it makes it better. So smoke before going on a bike ride, smoke before going to the theater, smoke before like everything.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was there in my 20s. I was kind of like that. But no, I've pulled like way, way back. And I don't think there's much of a connection between the fungi side of things and that.
Why do you think you pulled back?
I think now, I think when I was younger, I was smoking more like recreationally and socially. And I was way more of a social person, like in my 20s and 30s. I'm 50 now. And now I use it, if I smoke during the day, it's as a sort of a stimulant for artistic ideas. So I'll get high before diving into making art.
Yes.
Or dive into making music. So, and it really, you know, cannabis does different things for different people. Some people would just get into couch lock and they just want to like, you know, play video games or in a lot of ways tune out. And for me, it's always been much more of a stimulant on an artistic level. So I get a lot more ideas and maybe even different ways to approach these ideas that I wouldn't have if I wasn't high.
Yeah.
So I like to explore all those different avenues.
So that's actually something that I wanted to talk to you, and you mentioned it before. Using various different techniques, be it mushrooms or cannabis, during your creative processes. I mean, you make some awesome stuff. I think you've sent me some images, but I'd love to share some on the Instagram post for this episode, maybe. That would be,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
You sent me a thing of an owl a while ago, which just looks amazing. And you sent me a bunch of amazing images. So it would be cool to share some of that.
Yeah, definitely down to share. A lot of collage.
Yes.
In recent years. I used to draw a lot.
Did you?
Like every day for years. And sort of developed a certain style and aesthetic and ability drawing all the time. But in recent years, it's been a lot of collage work. Like my mind just won't stop with all these ideas. And it's fun to sort of search and seek out the source material.
Yes.
I try to stay, the only rule I really have is just like no National Geographic. It's just too widely done. So I try to find just like weirder, more esoteric, old magazines and books and stuff like that as source material. But yeah, I definitely get a lot of ideas while high on either cannabis or mushrooms. And yeah, hopefully I can kick you some music.
That would be amazing.
So yeah, you mentioned earlier about, I think like for me, I think the term was, taking mushrooms to make music to take mushrooms to.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've gotten really into over the last, like, maybe couple years, where I was finding that, laying still and quiet during a journey was like one experience. But if you have a soundtrack going along with your psychedelic journey, it kind of like amplifies the whole experience. And it also helps put flow into the whole experience, where you might not get, sometimes you can kind of get like stagnant or locked into a certain experience or idea that you're going through while on mushrooms. And I've found that, listening to music helps kind of keep things moving the whole time. And I was also finding it difficult to find music that I was into that was like long enough to go with the duration of a psychedelic journey, which is usually, in the 5 to 7 hour range.
Yes.
So I decided I've been a musician for a long time, and I've been really into synthesizers and synthesis and analog tape manipulation, the art of the drone, Indian instruments like the shruti and harmonium, where you can really express this like ongoing, consistent kind of drone that also feels like it's very breathy and dynamic and shifting. It's not just like a solid tone that's just going.
Yes.
So I started, sort of fusing my love for analog synthesis and my love for psychedelics, and wanting to basically like listen to exactly what I want to hear when I'm on these psychedelic journeys, to the best that I could. And then I realized, well, I could probably tap into what I want to be hearing in that state more if I was like a little bit in that state.
Yeah.
So instead of coming at it from like a sober point of view, I would, take like, microdose, sometimes a little bit more than a microdose, and then just lose myself in my array of synthesizers that I have in my studio and just really explore and not really think too much about where a lot of my previous years in making music is just like, all right, I'm kind of like going for this certain kind of sound, this certain kind of feel for this certain amount of duration, and wanted it to just like be this specific thing. And I found for me with art in general and music in general, it's way more fun and stimulating to just be free with it and just let it go where it wants to go and not so much be trying to confine it to any sort of set parameters. So yeah, I would take smaller doses and just fire up the studio and just go and, record for, anywhere between 45 minutes and a couple hours worth of material, and then listen back to things and like, oh, that first 30 minutes I was kind of getting to where I got later, which is really where I wanted to be. So of course, with like recording on computers and software, it's so easy to just be able to like, this stuff doesn't make the cut. It wasn't quite where I wanted to be yet. So that stuff gets edited out.
Nice.
And then I'll take that sort of initial tapestry that I threw down and then decide if I want to multi-track onto that, add other instruments. But I've been really into like, the drone, but it needs to be moving. It needs to be expanding and exploring new territory constantly, but not in an agitated, fast-paced kind of way, and more of a slowed down, more respectful to the space that I'm in while I'm making it and where I will be when I listen to it. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I just want to make sure, when you say the drone, I'm imagining you mean a kind of a semi-constant sound which has like a continual flow to it for like a prolonged period of time, versus kind of music which is like a beat or a rhythm, or does that make sense?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
Most of the music that I'm making for these journeys is beatless.
Interesting.
For the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'll keep it very minimal. It's still moving, it's still expanding. I'm still sort of shaping the sound through oscillators and filters that are built into the synthesizer, different components of the synthesizer that shape the sound that's coming out of it. But it'll be really slow movements in that way. And I'll lay those tracks down initially as sort of like just a foundation for me to work on top of. And I might do that 2 or 3 more times, also very minimally, sort of like when I'm multi-tracking, it's more like me jamming with myself. So I'll have that initial track playing back, and I'll just play to it as if it was another musician in the room doing something.
Yeah.
And then, but the cool thing is like I kind of know what that musician is going to do, right? Because it's me in a different time.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting dynamic that will happen in that way. And I'll just create these longer sort of these pieces in this way and really have fun exploring them. And the really, no pun intended, trippy thing about it is like when you're high in the experience of a larger dose, listening to music that you've made, it's even more surreal than you can ever imagine. And in most cases, during the playback and during the experience, it feels like it's music made by not me.
Wow.
Like somebody else. That it came, like a lot of times I don't even recognize it, or I don't know when this next movement is going to come in, or when this part changes into something else. I can't anticipate any of it. It's just almost just brand new, like I've never heard it before. But at the same time, there's this big time like familiarity to it,
Yes.
and this deep like soul connection to it as well, that just makes, you know, as somebody that's just like super passionate about music, being able to hear music in that kind of way is just on a next level. It's not like going to the record store and buying the new album by your whatever artist and playing that back and having like loving what they do and loving that experience. It's like on a deeper level. And it's really, I don't know, I have like this, just like this feeling of rejoice, and it's also very calming, but it's also challenging in a way where, so I'm a Scorpio born on Halloween, and I embrace the dark side of things.
Okay.
I'm very comfortable in the darker realms of supernatural and just day to day. And a lot of these journeys that I take, I think I mentioned a lot of them I do with my wife. Mm-hmm. She's Aquarius, and not so, she's open to the dark side of things for sure, and she's married to somebody that is, so she gets it. But at the same time, a lot of the music that I'm making can be quite challenging to somebody that isn't familiar with that sort of landscape and can't get comfortable with that sort of landscape. So she has to work a bit harder at resting into it and just being open to it. But I think she gets a certain amount of solace from knowing the source of that music, and that it's not, even though it might be a little darker and have these dark undertones to it, it's not like it's coming from like evil or anything, you know. This is like,
she knows the source.
Yeah, it's, you know, her husband who she loves, and she understands that the intention is true and has a lot more beauty to it. So it's a little bit on the challenging side for her, but for me, I'm just like so right at home with it. It just feels so good. And I've gotten really into these mixes, and every ceremony I mix it up. I'll add in new pieces that I've been working on, or also sometimes during the journey I'll notice like, that's like a little too abrasive, or that's like moving too fast or too slow. So usually like the day after or a couple days after, I'll go back in and make edits and take some stuff out, add some stuff in, and then we'll try it again the next round. But it's usually like a 6-7 plus hour long piece that I'm slightly adjusting here and there to make this long, sort of seamless, cohesive auditory experience.
It's so interesting. It's also, I can only imagine, based on what we talked about already earlier this episode, or maybe it's the last episode, I have a feeling this might be a two-parter.
Right, yeah, it's going that way.
But the feeling that you get, like the understanding, say if you've harvested an animal or you're harvesting mushrooms, and like the extra holistic experience of like consuming that. I can only imagine if you are taking mushrooms medicinally, that you have foraged yourself while listening to music that you have created yourself, while listening to, or while actually having consumed mushrooms previously. It's like there's this whole kind of
big feedback loop happening.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth there. So it must be, it's got to be really interesting.
It is. And I mean, I'm sure there's other people doing it too. I don't know who they are, but it's so individual and so specific to my experiences that it really resonates. And definitely having some sort of auditory experience during these ceremonies, it really augments the whole experience, and it keeps things from stagnation. And it's constantly moving you forward. And there's this one part of this sonic journey that I put together that has I found these like old tapes of Tibetan chanting, and I put them in this one tape player. This is all on cassette. And I put them in this one really nice tape player that I have that has the ability to pitch things down, speed up and stuff. And so I took the chanting and pitched it all the way low as it can go. And it's very, it feels like these are sounds that aren't humanly possible, but at the same time, this overwhelmingly human nature aspect. That's what it is. It is coming from human. And so these chants are just like really low and pitched down, and then I'll tune the oscillators on my synthesizer to that pitch or frequency, the sort of notes that they're moving in, and sort of fuse that synthesis into that vibration. And it is like a lot of what the synthesizer can do is like go way lower than the human voice and way higher than the human voice. It really, like, the spectrum is just a lot greater than most instruments are.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about it. And man, when these Tibetan monk chants come in, when you're just high on mushrooms in this low guttural way, it's like, it feels like their voice and their intention is like working on you and your whole system and everything in this like just unbelievable way. Like talking about the rinse, that's what it feels like they're doing. They're just like blessing you with these songs that are just like basically prayer and syllables that are meant to heal and create and incite. I don't know what they're saying, but I know, the basic essence of what they're trying to do is like on this deep meditative and healing, sound healing for the world, projecting that out there. And just the notion of like when they recorded it and where they recorded it, and now it's been like detuned and manipulated and made into something else and is now in my journey with me at this point. It's just like completely mind-blowing and really healing too. And then having the understanding that you're like kind of part of it, that and like the creation of that sonic journey. I helped put that together, and it was like it's almost like I'm collaborating with these monks in this faraway place that I'll never go and visit, and that probably all these monks are probably not even around anymore.
Yeah.
And their music is having this rebirth.
Like an evolution.
A new evolution of their sound and their healing. And that's exactly what it's doing to me in that state. It's just really beautiful. So I will work with like previously found stuff, mostly on cassette. That's like really obscure stuff. It's not like I need to worry about copywriting or any of that kind of stuff. And I really make it my own with all the other tracks that I infuse into it, all the other sounds, and just like jamming with it almost, like I said, like treating like the monks like are in the corner of the room with me and we're just having a jam session. And so it all, the music just all comes out like completely unique to me, and underlined by the state that I'm in, which is already a psychedelic state, and then further projected by larger dose during the playback of it.
Yeah. That's so cool.
It's pretty fun, man.
Yeah. There's like a couple of things that I want to talk about. And maybe let's see what you think is going to be better to jump into now. We've just been talking about music and psychedelics and the interconnectivity between them and creativity and as a whole. There is something that we had to chat about yesterday, which was the stoned ape theory, which I thought might be an interesting to chat about. It started going down a rabbit hole and I kind of cut us off because I was like, yeah, this could be interesting for this conversation. So we could talk about that, or we can jump into Amanita Muscaria. There's two routes. Where are you feeling like you're being pulled towards?
Well, I mean, yeah, the stoned ape theory is like a whole can of worms. There's really a lot there to unpack.
Okay.
So, I could try and touch on it just a little bit.
Yeah, let's do a quick pass maybe.
Okay. So, I guess we're also assuming that everybody listening knows what this quote-unquote theory is about.
Let's lay it out first, just in case people don't know, because I would assume there's probably a lot of people that don't know what the stoned ape theory is.
Yeah. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to? The definition.
I think you seem like you know more about it than I do.
So,
first of all, we can also say pause.
Yeah, no,
Google it.
Yeah, exactly, right. Because it is multifaceted and layered, but basically it's more of I think a hypothesis than a theory, but it's been dubbed that term, and it's something that Terence McKenna, who is, the late Terence McKenna, he's like one of the great psychonauts of our time. And in a nutshell, he's basically saying that during, way back, when there were, the hunters and gatherers were tracking and hunting animals, while they were on the pursuit, they were basically finding fungi in the feces of the animals that they were hunting, then in turn eating these, which were supposed to be psychedelic, or were psychedelic, and were enhancing all kinds of things for them, like, making them better hunters because of heightened awareness, which is whole part of what we were just talking about.
Yep.
That and increasing creativity and art and communication within these tribes, and in turn expanding consciousness.
Yes.
And so he's sort of claiming that it was a bit responsible for the transition, I believe, between like Homo erectus and Homo sapien.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And all the things like that would be beneficial for a quote unquote more superior upright man, and being more successful in nature and community and food, and even actually aspects of sexuality too, like increased libido and stuff like that. So creating more offspring and bigger communities faster and all that kind of stuff too. So going back to, I guess one of my mantras is all I know is that I don't know. So if I stay super open to this idea, it's like, well, yeah, this could be true. But I also am not a believer in the just like man sort of coming from ape and us getting, just the whole evolution of ape to man. I'm just not really a believer in that. But to back up more on like the technical side of this theory or practical side, where it's, for me, knowing what I know about fungi, it doesn't seem like a lot of, it's actually pretty rare there's only like maybe a couple, few maybe different species of psychedelic mushrooms that grow in dung. There's a lot of dung-loving fungi out there that grows in almost anything you can think of, from like rabbit poop to horse, and of course cattle, which is probably the most famous for being a substrate for psychedelic mushrooms. And I've eaten mushrooms straight out of cow dung before, and it pretty much tastes like it. But I just don't see the type of animals that would have been tracked and hunted as the type of animals that would produce scat that would be the proper kind of substrate for psychoactive mushrooms to grow in.
Yes.
So there's that. And then, I think you could say maybe cattle, but then the domestication of cattle, I think, was around 10,000 years ago or a little bit more. And then I think about, the continental divide and where some of the dung-loving psychoactive fungus were located in the world. I think that transition between Homo erectus and Homo sapien was happening actually, well before the continental divide. So I just, like, a lot of the timing where this would have happened just doesn't really line up for me doing the math that way. But then, like I was saying, I don't really believe that we've evolved that way. There's such a big jump from Homo erectus to Homo sapien, and the way that, like, there's this guy, I think his name is Greg Braden. He basically illustrates how there's this part of our DNA that was manipulated at some point in time in history. And for us, basically, and he breaks it down really eloquently, and it's been a while since I've listened to his talk, but it really resonated with me. And basically is kind of like we went from A to Z in our evolution in like such a short, fast little blip that usually takes like 1.5 million years or something, like really, really fast, like almost instantly. And there's this strand in our DNA that's actually manipulated, and it looks like it's been manipulated, and it went from A to Z in like a flash.
Interesting.
And so, and it really also correlates to a lot of like what was happening all across the world in all these different civilizations that were also having these huge epiphanies and huge jumps in, maybe technology, or at least in how structures were being built, like pyramids,
Yes,
and these
yeah.
megaliths and stuff all across the world.
Stonehenge and all that
Stonehenge and stuff like in Peru and South America, where there's just these giant megalith structures that are all put together like puzzles that are just, you can't slip a piece of paper in between a lot of these joints, and they're just giant structures that were supposedly been built like during the Bronze Age with like rudimentary tools by quote unquote uneducated people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And none of that just doesn't line up in my way of thinking. I think at some point we lost some kind of knowledge and technology that we were once gifted, probably by an outside source. Likely an outside source. And I believe in multi-dimensions, and there's all kinds of examples and proof that there are actual multi-dimensions around us. And I think at some point in quote unquote civilization through the past, we've been enhanced or manipulated or gifted, however you want to look at it, to be able to know about planets and stars that we can't see.
Yeah.
To be able to create structures that megalith structures, huge structures that benefit us in some way, where even today in our technology and all our knowledge, we can't figure out what they were for or what they were doing. And we can't replicate how they were put together at that time either. It's just like mind-boggling. We can't do it with the technology that we have right now. And it's like, whether it's the pyramids or these other structures or stuff and all over the world, where it's like, no, I just can't get behind that these things were built by 300 people tugging on a hemp rope with like sand ramps to get up and put these giant pieces together so perfectly and elegantly and stacked in these ways that are just, you wouldn't even stack something that way.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I guess, going back to the stoned ape theory, it's like I just don't think that's how we evolved. I think there was some sort of outside interjection from cultures or outside society or beings or creatures or whatever it is. Again, all I know is that I don't know, but I do know that we were tweaked at some point to jump in the evolution of how we think and know and do. And I think technologies and ways of being that are so much more superior than where we're at now were once in place, and something happened along the way to sort of erase that.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting.
like I said, this is a big can of worms that we're opening, and it goes into all this like mysticism and more esoteric ideas on who we are and where we came from and all that. But these are also ideas and concepts that a lot of us experimenting with psychedelic drugs go to these, not drugs, medicines, go down these avenues to explore. We ask a lot of these questions before we go into these medicinal journeys, and while we're in them, where did we come from? How did we get this way? How were we able to do this or that? And we can't do that now. There's missing links in there, and it's fun to explore these ideas when you're on psychedelics, because new ideas come into play to explore. But not only that, we need to be open and not so sure about where we came from and how we did it and how we evolved and how we expanded. I think the number of possibilities, how that may have happened, is so vast, and especially the way of how that may have happened is so vast and probably beyond any of the options that we think are on the table.
Can even comprehend.
Exactly.
It's funny. It's so true as well. Like every kind of technological or sorry, so roller coaster. Every I guess like scientific understanding or every kind of bit of progress of how the world works or the universe works or humans work it's so often there's like a way that everyone thinks everything is, and then someone has a new concept and everyone was so adamant that was the correct way before, and then now this is the new way of thinking, and it's just kind of like these generations of new ways of thinking about things. So I think you're absolutely right in the sense that we don't, all we can know is that we don't know. It's such a I'm going to coin that phrase.
We have to be open to these other possibilities, otherwise we're just we're restricting where we may be able to think and go from here.
You're going to slow progress. Okay, well, thank you for indulging me with the stoned ape theory. We should also caveat, when I was doing a little bit of research about that question, the general scientific consensus is that it is not a sound theory now. But it's still an interesting idea, which I think is worth talking about, and it certainly sparked a whole sort of existential conversation that we had now. So I'm in no capacity do I regret asking that question.
Again, there's elements of it that do ring true to me, like the whole creative side of things, and maybe a lot of the petroglyphs and rock art and stuff like that. That goes back, thousands of years. I think, that kind of stuff. I think definitely, for sure, actually was influenced by psychoactive plant medicines. Maybe ayahuasca, definitely like peyote and San Pedro.
So you mean like cave paintings and that water art?
That art is so psychedelic. There's like, depictions of humanoid figures with projections coming out of their skulls and stuff. Like, what is that? To me, that's like somebody having a journey or an out-of-body experience somehow. Maybe it was through shamanic drumming, fasting, those kind of ways, but in the Southwest Americas and Mexico, Arizona, Texas, it's like a lot of places where San Pedro and peyote and these plants are growing, and also the fungi too. So you have to wonder if there's some kind of a connection there. A lot of this art is so psychedelic and weird. I've been really going down the rabbit hole of, I think I was telling you about this guy I've been following on YouTube that chases down a lot of this artwork from thousands of years ago on like cliff walls and caves and stuff like that, and it just goes so deep, not only here in the Americas but all over the world, and you get a lot of just really interesting, strange, psychedelic imagery that just seems like weird for a normie, uneducated, all I'm interested is in like feeding myself for the day kind of individual or culture. Yeah, you would expect the conventional spear or bow and arrow chasing deer or whatever game. That is a common traditional perception of imagery that you see in that kind of situation. But it sounds like there's so much other stuff too, which is and talking about like outside influences, a lot of these humanoid figures that are depicted will have like 6 fingers and 6 toes, all over, you know, not just like in one ancient tribe or specific area. It's like all over the place. And it's like, you know, they're not depicting, you know, like long-horned sheep with like 5 horns and stuff. It's like 2 horns. You know, they know how many fingers are on their hand.
Yeah.
They're not, accidentally throwing another mandible into the depiction just for fun. So that kind of goes back to me thinking about more of just like, what were, and was it possible for there to be these outside beings or forces, or whether they're meeting these entities through psychoactive, psychedelic journeys, or were these actual physical beings that were in the mix at some point that were bestowing upon them information that we don't even get today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it is, all that art is really psychedelic, and there's got to be some kind of connection to plants and fungi through it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Should we jump to the other subject that I offered you?
Yeah.
Talking about, I mean,
The Amanita.
yeah.
I'm starting to get a little ear fatigue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got some other ear pads to put on.
These are good for like a little while, but
I think that's about right. Seems like my levels, for some reason, I'm like, need to turn mine up a bit. I think it's like, there, it's better.
that sounds good. I can't
Yeah.
hear myself and mine as much as I hear you.
Do you want me to turn you up a bit?
Maybe just a little bit.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Amanita, now, first of all, Amanita muscaria. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Muscaria? Muscaria? Probably less emphasis on scary.
Amanita muscaria.
Amanita muscaria.
Yeah.
Amanita muscaria. First of all, I mean, like, you've been harvesting Amanita muscaria for a while, right? And it blows my mind, like, how many you can pick. Like, you had an amazing day the other day where you said you picked like over 200 in one day, right?
Yeah, and that's leaving a lot behind too. There can be some epic flushes of that mushroom. So maybe I should, since we're talking about this mushroom, describe, I think if I just gave like a brief description of it,
Yeah.
people will know what we're talking about. So this is the kind of like the red mushroom. It's got like a red cap, white stipe, stem, and it has like these little white dots, usually parts of the universal veil, because this mushroom kind of comes out of an egg.
Yes.
An egg sac, and like parts of that sac stay attached to the cap, and
Okay.
they're white, and that's what causes those little speckles. It's the mushroom that Alice in Wonderland eats to like get really big and get really small, and it's the sort of fairy tale mushroom that you see depicted all over the world.
Yeah, it's the classic.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly the inspiration for Santa Claus as well.
Yeah. So this mushroom has got, it's a pretty loaded and has a lot of baggage and just a lot of, unfortunately, misinformation around it. A lot of people think you can't touch it, you can't eat it, you can't work with it in any way. It's toxic and deadly. But the truth is that, you know, it's it would take an awful lot of this mushroom to do enough damage to kill anybody.
Oh, okay.
And as far as I know, there's only one record of somebody dying from imbibing with it. And it's not quite clear if that person died of hypothermia or not.
Oh.
Because that was also part of the autopsy for when they found the body, that they had eaten the mushroom, but they also ate it under extreme cold circumstances. So, and then there's just a lot of misinformation around it in that sort of way. But it's been a mushroom that some cultures have been working with as medicinal for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's just been this shadow on it, just telling people to steer away from it. And that's part of just like, you know, early European culture and American culture, and this sort of information being pumped into publications and guidebooks and showing skull and crossbones associated with it for you to stay away from it and all that. And it could have adverse reaction to your system if not, you know, taken in a respectable way. But it's actually, you can do like a boil or a double boil to this mushroom and cast out the water each time and then fry it up with some butter, and it's actually a really delicious culinary mushroom.
Oh, okay.
So you can imbibe with the mushroom on that kind of a level. Or, you know, there's a lot of people that have worked with it in larger doses. There's a few different chemicals in it, ibotenic acid and muscimol, that can have a hallucinogenic kind of response to your system. And people are usually obtaining that sort of effect by eating a lot of the caps to get to that kind of state. And if you read a lot of trip reports on using that mushroom in that sort of way, you get a lot of people that talk about almost like drunken states and intoxicated and foaming at the mouth, drooling, extreme discomfort in your stomach and bowels, but also having these like hallucinogenic sort of experiences as well.
Okay.
And to me, none of that sounds like fun. And there's a lot of other mushrooms that will get you there without all those adverse reactions. So those mushrooms are what I recommend working with on that sort of a level, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for a long time, there hasn't been a lot of research and study around this mushroom and how to work with it and what benefits it could have for us. And in recent years, there's actually been a few books to come out that actually do lay out a lot of research and a lot of what's the word for it, where it's not so much laboratory work, but it's like communal public work, where there's like these larger social experiments with people, up to, I think this one woman's book, her name is Baba Masha. She did a trial with over 3,000 people using it on a microdose level. And her book has like hundreds and hundreds of first-hand accounts from people working with it on a microdose level, and all the things that it just all these benefits that we're helping these people from, oh man, just so much. Eating disorders, weaning off of alcohol. It kind of has this tendency to make you want to do things for your body that are good opposed to bad. So like bad eating habits, sugar, smoking, nicotine addictions, alcohol addictions, things like that. Weaning off SSRIs and a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. These things tend to cause this, like when you're using Amanita muscaria as microdose, those things kind of cause like this disruption and unease with the body that makes you not want to partake in them.
Interesting.
And there's so much more research that needs to happen, but it's really interesting to read these first-hand accounts from people and all the little things that they've helped with. One of the main reasons why I got into working with this mushroom on the lower microdose level, which is where all the research is saying, like, this is how you work with this mushroom, not on these bigger intakes of the mushroom, but more on small scale. The reason that I got interested in it was because I heard that it was great for sleep and for dreaming and dreaming navigation, and also for dream retention, which has been something that I've kind of struggled with almost my whole life.
Yes, yeah.
Where I know I dreamt something last night,
Yeah.
but by the time I have my first sip of coffee, it's like so far gone. Like
Yes.
I just can't remember it. And so that's how I started getting into it. We would harvest our own mushrooms out there and started experimenting with making teas. And it was basically instant. Like the first night that we made teas with Amanita muscaria, we just had deep sleep, crazy dreams all night long, and the next day I could remember almost every detail.
Interesting.
Yeah, just like game changer, because we spend so much of our time in life sleeping.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of valuable information that wants to come in through that avenue of sleep for us, whether it's just stuff in our own mind and psyche that wants to get processed that isn't getting processed in our daily waking life because there's so many distractions and different agendas while we're awake,
Yeah.
than to pay attention to that stuff. Or like guides and ancestors that see that as a window to interject help or thoughts or ideas that might be beneficial to us in the waking hour that we just can't listen to or take in or remember. So that's what attracted me to Amanita muscaria, working with it as a medicine, and that's my main interest in continuing to work with it from here right now. And the sleep thing has just been a game changer.
Yeah.
For me too. And there's so many people that suffer from insomnia and are just thinking about their job or their kids and different just daily stresses that kind of keep them up at night. And this medicine is just such a great way to get relief from that, and also to incite different answers to problems and issues that we've probably been dealing with on our own or not dealing with on our own, that, we can get some answers for.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It sounds like you're suggesting a microdose, and it's something that you take just before bedtime. Do you have any kind of altered feeling in the day? First of all, you said you have a really, like, is it so it's a good sleep? You feel very energized afterwards?
Yeah, it's a deep sleep, and you wake up, feeling the way you would feel if you actually had an uninterrupted sleep. The interesting thing, so you don't have to take it before bed.
Okay.
You can take it during the day, and you can take it in the morning. And a lot of people, it's interesting because this mushroom has more of that sedative sort of characteristics to it if you take it in the evening. But if you take it in the morning, it's almost the opposite. It's almost like coffee.
Interesting.
Where it gives you more vigor, and you feel more awake and aware and energized. And this mushroom goes back, one of the bigger, more known ways, that examples to give for that is like the berserkers used to imbibe in this mushroom before going into battle to give them they're known for like just crazy energy and just charging into battle, and they would eat Amanita muscaria before they went and did that.
So just a bit of context, who are the berserkers? Do you know?
This is like more like I guess what you would think of like Vikings.
Oh, okay.
Like early Danish and maybe Swedish, Scandinavian cultures.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it's part of why they have that like fiery reputation.
Totally.
In battle.
Yep. Came from that mushroom. So it's really interesting because I can't think of a lot of like, plants or things that we imbibe that will, depending on when we take it, will have a complete opposite reaction to it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting in that way. And to sort of further the darker shroud around this mushroom, like recently, I think within the last few days, actually, the FDA put it on its list of, banned substances to have in things consumed. And this came out of, and I'm not a fan of the FDA and in general, and definitely I don't think, I don't really give much credence to a lot of the things that they allow and don't allow for us to partake in as consensual adults.
Yeah, it seems like there could be other factors like money involved that has an impact.
Yeah,
as well.
There's a lot of that, and if you're really concerned about people's health, maybe you should do something about corn syrup and just a huge list of other things.
Healthcare
that actually does kill people.
Yeah.
But yeah, to back up, they it just made their can't be anything consumed list, and it was based off of, there was this company from California that were making these like microdose Amanita, quote unquote Amanita gummies.
Yes.
And so people were buying these and eating these, and I believe it was like 3 people that died.
Wow.
And multiple people were hospitalized and just kind of like freaked out.
Yeah.
And so it was just like instantly made the headlines. This, quote unquote magic mushroom, Amanita muscaria, is responsible for all this. And of course, anybody that knows this mushroom as medicine and has worked with it knew from the get that's just total BS. And when the analytics finally came out on what was in these Amanita gummies, there was so much other gnarly shit in there. There was like DMT. I think actually they were putting psilocybin in them too. Just loaded with all these other additive chemicals that we don't know how they interact with each other. And that turned out to be actually what the problem was. Nobody's ever died from a microdose amount of ibotenic acid or muscimol that are, the main chemicals of quote unquote concern in that mushroom. So it turned out that they were pumping all this other crap into these gummies, and were interacting with, who knows, people's medications and with themselves in this way to cause harm to people. And they just threw it under the, okay, it's Amanita muscaria. So they've made it, it's not Amanita muscaria, just for the record too, is not illegal.
Okay.
It's not illegal to pick, to harvest, to eat in any sort of way, or to sell it. So, it's made not only that list for the FDA, but now what we're seeing, what I saw firsthand after this gummy product hit the market and had that sort of effect, a lot of payment processors decided to not process payments for anything Amanita muscaria related. So a big part of my wife and my business, where we sell all kinds of mushroom, culinary, medicinal kind of mushroom products, we were selling dried Amanita caps that we harvest to people to use for medicine. And we have a huge list of thank yous and emails from people where it's just like changed their lives in such a positive way. And basically we got contacted by some of our payment processors like PayPal, Venmo, Stripe. They're not allowing money to be any sort of transaction through them if you have Amanita muscaria dried on its own or in any kind of product. And one of those companies, two of them actually dropped us. One of them seized all our assets, and we're still waiting to get, and it was a lot assets that came from all kinds of different, also legal avenues. So,
man, that sounds stressful.
Yeah, it's been stressful and disruptive, and has cut off that medicine line to a lot of people that we've been working with. So there's that sort of like hysteria that's taking place right now around Amanita muscaria that needs to be reversed. And, I can't help but think about, like you just said, the money aspect that can't be controlled over natural substances that can't be trademarked or copyrighted. This is medicine that literally can be free. This mushroom grows like all over the place.
Yeah.
And can be free, easily obtainable medicine for people to work with for a whole wide range of ailments, including a bunch of stuff that we don't even know about yet. And it's just taking that opportunity away for grown adults to make that decision whether they want to imbibe in that fungi as a medicine for themselves. There seems to be, like I said, just like everything and anything goes for all these other products that are widely documented as being detrimental, toxic, and deadly for people to consume, that are just right there, free for the takings for all ages, So it's really disheartening. It's a really interesting and dynamic voyage that this mushroom is on. It's definitely come into the limelight over the last handful of years, and more research is being done, and more of that research is looking great. For the longest time, the only research was done on rats and like injecting some of these chemicals into rats' brains and causing lesions, so they thought the same thing would happen to humans, but like what humans are injecting these chemicals into their brains. So none of it really lined up and made sense, but it still got shelved as like a toxic thing to stay away from and not explore. But the range, Robin, in which it can benefit people is just so vast. Even just like little side things where you don't think it will help you with, like one of my really good friends and a friend that lives on the property with us, he was taking it for dream retention and sleep. Although he sleeps really well, he wanted to remember his dreams more. He's been a chronic teeth grinder for like a long time. And he stopped grinding his teeth at night. And it's just like stuff like that.
Wow.
You know, where and people don't really talk about that sort of issue, you know, 'cause it's kind of personal and maybe not that fun to bring up.
Yeah.
You know, with your friends and stuff, you're not going to talk about how you grind your teeth really bad. But actually, a lot of people suffer from that.
Yeah, I do.
And, okay.
Yeah, I grind my teeth sometimes.
And it's not a healthy thing for us to do. It's usually rooted in stress.
Mm-hmm.
And geez, what a simple, inexpensive solution without negative side effects that could help you. That helped my friend.
Yeah.
You know, that can help so many other people. And that's just one example of like these weird little offshoot type ailments that people have that can be corrected, that could really make a huge difference in people's lives. So hopefully more research will come out. Hopefully people will realize that this is medicine to actually embrace and work with on a positive level, instead of all the fear mongering. Even there was an article that just came out with somebody, I think in Idaho or Utah, that died. It's like one of the first documented cases of somebody, and I don't even know how well it's documented, but this is what they're saying, that died on a psychoactive mushroom. And it turns out it was like a cubensis. But the article in the newspapers and the news online blogs and stuff show Amanita muscaria as the culprit, you know, but we're talking about psilocybin, you know, a chemical that's not even in that mushroom. And this happens time and time again with like poisonings of like Amanita phalloides, the death cap. Some of the most toxic and deadly mushrooms are in the Amanita genus. So there's that sort of like brother, cousin, guilty by association kind of thing happening. But there's also some of the most delicious culinary non-toxic mushrooms are also in the Amanita genus, like Cocora and Velosa and stuff like that. So it's just getting an across the board blanket bad rep and extreme misrepresentation by the media and just like fear mongers and now the FDA.
It's interesting as well. I wonder if, and this is coming from a perspective of like my career path the last, 15 plus years, but I feel like Amanita muscaria has a branding problem. And I think it's easy to pick that mushroom out because it's so iconic and so distinctive in the way that it looks. Mm-hmm. There are so many LWMs, like little white mushrooms, that you can't really determine between any of them. You know, they just look like any other mushroom. Mm-hmm. So it would be very hard to have one of those be like the poster boy or poster girl of like poison and danger. Whereas something which is such a distinctive image, also weaving itself into culture, like you said, Alice in Wonderland, and all those kind of things as a symbol, as a representative of something which is easily perceived from anyone who doesn't understand it as something dangerous or,
Yeah.
unknown. I think that that's kind of a factor where it's easy to hook something onto a mushroom that looks like that.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. I understand that perspective. And, even if you ask like a little kid that doesn't know much anything about mushrooms to draw a mushroom, they would probably draw something that looked like Amanita muscaria. So I understand it as a sort of blanket symbol almost of the mushroom world.
Yes.
But if you're if you're casting information to the public on something that's unhealthy or caused a death, you would want to just go, 10 seconds deeper to find a depiction of that actual mushroom and not just like grab, if sprayed grapes were causing, people to be hospitalized, you're not going to show a cantaloupe or something as the culprit or an apple as the culprit doing it just because,
Yeah.
So it's like just, say, and I don't really, the information around that death is still like really vague, and I've never heard of anybody dying. Like it's almost impossible. Like I think it is impossible to OD from taking psilocybin, from eating the mushrooms. Like your body at some point just doesn't want to even take it in. It's kind of a gnarly mushroom to ingest.
Yeah.
It's not like it's some sweet, delicious, savory experience.
Some of it tastes like poop.
Yeah, some of it does. And so it's not like it's not addictive. Like you eat a few grams of mushrooms, and the last thing you want to do of magic mushrooms, cubensis, last thing you want to do is do that again tomorrow night.
Right.
So you want to have that space and time to integrate. You just automatically want to do that. It's not something that you want to abuse on the regular.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's about, and it's not the right language, but it's about optics. It's about branding. It's about understanding. And I think it's very much, mushrooms are kind of like, for the wide part of the population, a very misunderstood subject. And I think any time that there isn't knowledge, there can be some fear. Mm-hmm. So I guess hopefully you taking the time today to share a lot of this information and knowledge and perspective will help in some capacity and start feeding the knowledge out to everyone and kind of undoing some of there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully it can start changing viewpoints.
I can only, try to do that from my own personal relationships with fungi and my own point of view. I'm not a mycologist. I'm not a scientist. A lot of this information I share is just like firsthand personal experience, and also based on talking and with a lot of other people that have similar experiences and have done their own exploration. But a lot of this stuff is nothing new. It's not really new information. It's just information that's been tampered down and not been illuminated for various different reasons. And it's a shame. So it's just my perspective and my experiences that I can share, and everybody has their own journey and will have different experiences with these medicines. Definitely doesn't treat everybody the exact same way, but there are definitely common themes that run through it where you can kind of have an idea of what you can get out of it, and I've seen it change so many people's lives that were really struggling with like personal things that have happened to them, darker experiences that they have gone through and haven't been able to process through other ways, especially through pharmaceutical avenues with just so many different side effects and things, to just be sort of fearful for ourselves. You know, we have to nourish ourselves, nourish our guts, nourish our souls and minds through nature and what is out there. And I think all the answers are out there, and it just begins with communing with nature and yourself, and being gentle with yourself, being gentle with nature, understanding the plants and the fungi that are out there that we have access to for free, that we can grow ourselves. So many things that we can just grow ourselves in our closets or in a little greenhouse that will, you know, give us the solace we need for a lot of things that are quite detrimental to us physically and psychologically. So it's just a matter of just like slowing down and being open and knowing that we don't know, and doing a little bit of experimentation, hopefully finding some answers through more gentle means than what's being offered us through companies.
Amen to that, brother. Thank you for sharing so much knowledge and stories and so many things today. I've had a great time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for sitting down with me, inviting me over to your home to do this. It felt good to do it in person.
Yeah.
As opposed to
over the interwebs.
Yeah.
Yeah, way better. So, we should do a little moment where people who are listening can go to your website, social, all those things. Where should people go? And the other thing as well is that a lot of the things that we talked about today, music, as far as I'm aware, I was on your website, and I think that you actually sell that music, right? Music to have an experience with psilocybin.
Yep.
There's many things on there.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of dyeing, culinary, and psychedelic mushrooms. I'm kind of doing your job for you right now.
No, that's fine. I mean,
we also have mushroom knives, which are amazing. I witness with envy many times you making quick work of those mushrooms.
Yeah, it's just we try to have stuff in our shop that, you know, that we want and that we don't see out there.
Yeah.
So we try to come up with different products and things that we ourselves want to use and deem useful, and whether it's on the health side of things or more practical for harvesting mushrooms, like the knives. And yeah, I think right now maybe on the site too, I've got some of these like 5-6 hour long journeys available on a thumb drive that I can send you. You can listen to it
sweet
that way as wave files. Yeah, all our dried culinary mushrooms, porcinis, just different infusions of things, mushroom gravies. Our products kind of change as we get into different things, and
like seasonally.
Different things, and seasonally too.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite dynamic. There's a lot of fun stuff to look at. I need to get into maybe doing more of art and stuff on there too for sale, but I'm making like one-off limited edition mushroom related t-shirts and stickers and fun stuff like that too. But yeah, there's a lot to look at there. I'm sure you'll have them in the links below.
I'll put it down in the show notes.
All right.
But what also we might as well say now as well, so people can get it in their mind. So what's the name of the site?
It's through bornfreenaturalmystic.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then How do people find you on social?
On social, I think my Instagram is still at Billy Sprague, but the main head title will show William Arthur Sprague IV.
Underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then also you're pretty active on Facebook.
I'm pretty active on Facebook, yeah. There's a few different mushroom groups, mostly the Mendocino Coast Mushroom Club Facebook group, Forage Mendocino, and my own page too, which is just my name. I'll post a lot of my adventures on there too.
Sweet. Thank you again, man.
Thank you.
It was good to sit down.
Definitely was.
Cheers.
Thanks, Robin.
Right, that's another episode done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed hearing more information and knowledge and wisdom from William Arthur Sprague IV. That's all with him for now. I'd love to get him back on at some point. I'm sure there'll be plenty more for us to talk about. It's always fun to sit down and have a chit chat. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please give us a follow, set to download, and enjoy the stories that will continue to come out every couple of weeks. We've got some great people in the pipeline, lots of interesting stories about mushrooms, about foraging, about hunting, about just generally skills that are valuable when you're out in the wilderness. Thank you again to William Arthur Sprague. It was a fantastic conversation that we had. I always cherish my time with him, and for taking me out and teaching me a bunch about how to be in the wild, finding mushrooms, and kind of listening to the messages that they're trying to tell me. It's always appreciated. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and until next time.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.